Welcome to Act Out. I'm Eleanor Goldfield, and this is your tipping point. This week's spoken word, what I'm about to say, and the interview will doubtlessly bring the trolls out of the woodwork, claiming that I'm full of shit, or a dumb bitch, or some variation of the two. But here are the facts. On Monday, 4 toothless gun control proposals were offered up in the Senate, including denying suspected terrorists firearms and explosives, funding for background checks, but not making them mandatory, and a waiting period for suspected terrorists. All 4 failed. Why? As Slate so simply put it, despite public support, gun control advocates still lack the political power of the gun rights lobby. Yeah, no shit. Money talks, and we the people? Well, we might as well be deaf mutes in an anechoic chamber. And I'll get back to the gun lobby in a minute, but before I do, let's check out some other facts. An assault-style rifle was used to kill 50 people at an LGBTQ nightclub in Orlando. Assault-style rifles were used in 7 of the 8 largest mass shootings since July of last year. And riddle me this, why the fuck would you argue for the possession of an assault rifle? Has the zombie apocalypse started? Are you hunting swarms of deer that also carry assault weapons? Or are you just a crazy fuck that wants to shoot up a school, theater, or nightclub? Oh, but they're just assault-style rifles. No, fuck you. Anything that shoots 800 rounds a minute has no fucking place in society. You can call it Henry if you want to. Facts are facts, and 13.3 rounds a second is fucking stupid. And that mind-boggling tidbit of stupidity aside, there have been more mass shootings this year than there have been days. Guns remain unregulated despite public support for gun control and the fact that the Second Amendment explicitly calls for regulation. And we can argue about the arcane nature of the Second Amendment in general, but even if you stand firmly by it, you have to therefore stand firmly by the regulation of guns, which, shockingly, so many don't. As for motives, hate is bred by extremists. Extremist Muslims, extremist Christians. And for the record, it's the Christian right pushing anti-LGBTQ legislation, not Muslims. If you're sickened by this man hating gays, then it follows that you are also sickened by the cross-bearing, Bible-thumping lunatics, as well as the extremist Muslims. And therefore, you should embrace a Muslim with no judgment, just as you would your friendly Christian neighbor. We have to recognize how our own system promotes hatred, bigotry, racism, and sexism, and then makes it super fucking easy for the hateful to just walk outside and find weapons that could kill tens of people per second. And finally, yes, guns do kill people. And it's pretty astonishing that this is even still used as a counter-argument against gun control. If guns didn't kill people, methinks we would have fewer mass shootings in this country. No? Would an average of 91 Americans a day die from guns if guns didn't kill people? I mean, shit. How are they dying then? What a fucking mystery. If it were just about evil people, then why is it that countries with gun regulation don't have mass shootings? Do we just have a monopoly on evil people? I mean, you could argue that we have an unfair amount of evil people, but shit, 0 mass shootings in Australia since strict gun regulation went into effect in 1996? That is one hell of a coincidence. Or it's not at all. And here's the thing. Let's just say, for shits and giggles, that I was in favor of guns, had a gun, enjoyed having a gun. If I were also a logical person, I would be pro-gun control as well. Because we already know what the lack of gun control looks like. Every day we know what that looks like. But we actually have no idea what living in a country with regulated guns looks like. That well-regulated line in the Second Amendment, yeah, we have no idea what that looks like. What if it's a lot better than what we have now? Isn't that the point of evolving policies and legislation? That we see something isn't working, and then we endeavor to fix it. Well, more mass shootings than days in a year sounds to me like a broken fucking policy. So why not try the alternative? And stop before you say, we have guns because the government does. Yeah, well, good luck against anti-aircraft guns, tanks, grenade launchers, drones, and all of the other shit that you're not allowed to have, but that the government has literal fuck tons of. And yes, I think that we should have gun control for police too, but that's a separate issue. Should we outfit every house with a missile launcher? Should everyone own a Prius and an armored tank? Even if you have guns, realize that you are for some form of weapons control, even though you know that the government has more than you can ever store in your survivalist bunker. This isn't about being a victim or a hero. The stats have already shown that those gun lobby, pardon the pun, trigger words are a load of shit. This is about policy that has buried more Americans since 1968 than the whole sum of those killed in wars in our country's history. This shit is not working. And don't just take that from me and my stats. Take it from some of the people who have lived those stats. Making a Killing, a documentary film that covers the power of the gun lobby, the greed, and the disgusting push to perpetuate lies and death in the name of profit, isn't about preaching gun abolition. It's a platform for those who have lived gun violence to speak their truths. It's a documentary that documents the reality of gun ownership and the lives led, quite literally, in the crosshairs of the most powerful lobby in the country. After seeing the film, I spoke with Brave New Films programs director Lori Jones about the film and the fight for gun regulation and common sense policy. Take a look. So the film Making a Killing doesn't just focus on the NRA, but on the gun companies themselves, which is something you don't often hear about. Talk about the partnership there and how they together and separately, of course, support the continuation of gun violence in this country.
Well, the gun companies want profit, and they've done a really great job of making a profit. And the NRA and the gun companies work together. The NRA is the voice for the gun companies in Congress. And so the NRA is lobbying for bills that absolutely support making more profit for the gun companies. So if that means not having universal background checks, they're going to make more money from gun sales.
So on that same note, in one of the stories in the film, there's a woman who puts out a restraining order against her husband. His guns are then confiscated, but then he goes to a gun show, easily gets a gun, and proceeds to fire upon his estranged wife and her father. So how much of the gun pie, so to speak, is due to gun shows and that completely easy access to guns without any sort of background check or care of who's buying?
Gun shows are an enormous problem. 92% of Americans agree with universal background checks. So when they talk about the gun show loophole, it actually includes all private sales. So if I wanted to sell my gun to you out of the back of my car, you wouldn't have to go through a background check. So gun shows are the biggest example of the loophole.
So with regards to the private seller, I mean, it seems almost impossible to police somebody selling guns out of the back of their car, but how would you go about policing or regulating something that isn't as, large scale as a gun show?
Well, I think two ways. One is the amount of guns that can be purchased at a store. So you're seeing this in Chicago a lot. People are driving from Chicago to Indiana, 45 minutes maybe, and buying guns in bulk and then going back to the south side of Chicago and selling guns out of the back of their car. So if someone were flagged, so to speak, if they bought 40 guns, it's an easy solution for the gun stores themselves to be held accountable for how many guns they're selling to individuals. It's really straightforward. Now, you're not going to solve every single problem. So going back to the example, if I'm selling you a gun from the back of my trunk, that's not always going to be caught. But it will be caught if someone does this over and over again, especially if they're going to gun stores and buying guns in bulk and then taking them to neighborhoods.
So one of the things that you hear a lot is that if someone had a gun at a mass shooting, like with the Aurora thing that's covered in the film, if somebody in the audience had just had a gun, there wouldn't have been nearly as much carnage. Does that argument hold any water?
I really don't think it does. Someone brought this up in the Aurora shooting. There were several gun owners in the audience, and one of them said that he wouldn't have known where to shoot. If he had had his gun on him, he would have been blind. So the likelihood of him shooting someone else is much more, it's much higher than if he actually would have saved someone. I think that's the important thing to remember. And this came up with the Gabby Giffords shooting too. Someone ran towards the shooter thinking it was the shooter and almost shot. And so really this is about innocent people would be more likely to die.
So what about that argument? You hear this argument a lot, like, well, I only have guns because other people have guns, and I only have a gun because if an intruder comes into the home, I want to be ready. Talk a little bit about that argument and the fallacy that's inherent in that argument.
Well, so much of this is in the behind the argument of the Second Amendment, and people are going to stand by that. So I think knowing that your risk of unintentionally shooting yourself or someone that you love is increased, knowing that I think is very important. And then based on that, how you want to store your gun safely. If you want to have a gun, as long as it's stored safely and that you know all of the reasons that you have it and all of the risks involved with having it, that's when you want to make the decision on whether you want to bring a gun into your home.
To see the film's trailer and organize a screening, visit bravenewfilms.org/makingakilling.